Hey, I'm excited to have David Fisher here with us at Red Cape Revolution. David's been a friend of Red Cape Revolution and me personally for a while, and he has two great new books, updated books that are coming out called Networking in the 21st Century, Why Your Network Sucks and What to Do About It. I love that subtitle. And also Networking in the 21st Century on LinkedIn, both incredibly important today for doing the kind of networking we need to do. But welcome, D Fish. Thanks for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me. Super excited.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about, you tackled updating these two books at a time when there was like a few things going on in the world, and I think a few things going on in your life too.
Yeah. You know, I've got a young son, a 2-year-old, and there was this global pandemic going on.
Really?
And I hadn't
heard about that.
Yeah, right. And I just had all this free time, and I was like, you know what? I could update one of my books, but why not just do two? You know.
We love overachievers here at Red Cape Revolution.
Right. But a lot of it was actually driven from a place that was kind of selfish in some ways, because a lot of my own work and my business is driven by networking. It's not only stuff that I do to help other professionals and teach and coach and train, but it was for me. So I was kind of looking at how things were changing for me because of the pandemic and what was happening. So, you know, and I was wanted to update the networking book. I started in on that and realized that obviously in a time where digital is so important, I was like, okay, let's do another update of the LinkedIn book. And so I had two books coming out at the same time. Yeah, it's nutty. I wouldn't suggest it to anybody, but I'm glad I did it now that we're almost done.
Good. Yeah, I'm having enough to do with one book coming out. But
yeah,
I think I mentioned this, but I've always loved this subtitle, Why Your Network Sucks and What to Do About It. So tell me, why do most of our networks suck?
So the very short answer is that there's two reasons why. One is that we're actually not wired to network in the way that we think we're supposed to. And that gets to the second point, which is our conception of networking is wrong. And too many of us think that networking is about developing a lot of connections, a lot of contacts with people that we don't know, becoming everybody's best friend, becoming the life of the party, going to every networking event, going to every conference. And there's a lot of effort in that conception. And also, I said, our brains are actually not good at that. They're not actually wired to maintain a lot of relationships. So one of the things I really noticed is that the people who were successful at networking were the ones who really looked at it as relationships, but who looked at it as a process of creating what in the literature is called weak connections, where people that you just kind of know. And there's actually a lot of value in that if it's done correctly and intentionally. So that's really, I think, one of the biggest struggles is that we just have the wrong conception. And because of that, we struggle a little bit and we find it's hard and it's awkward. So we just say to ourselves, well, I'm a crappy networker, so why even bother?
So a weak connection, tell me about like a weak connection as opposed to what a strong connection looks like. Who are weak connections, and why are they weak, and why is that a good thing?
Right. So this is actually driven by some of the research done where the technical term is weak connection. Mark Granovetter, who is a big pretty prominent sociologist, wrote a paper on this called The Strength of Weak Ties. And what he had found, and it's been corroborated since then, a lot of the network science research, is that we think that we're going to get the best opportunities through people we know, the strong connections, as you say, our best friends, our family, people we're closely tied to and see often. What has been shown is that we actually get opportunities, not because of the closeness of the relationship, but because of the access that we have to other spheres of influence and information through people. And so kind of the idea of a weak connection is somebody that you see between once a week and once a year. Right. So you and I talking, we're weak connections of each other. We definitely see each other on LinkedIn, which I'll bring up in a moment. But, you know, we have maybe a conversation or two a year. We see each other through emails. You know, we're connected through our alma mater. But we have that foundation. And then if there's a way that, you know, I see I can help you or vice versa, we can kind of build from there. But that's why finding ways to create these weak connections intentionally is such a powerful networking process. And I found that the people that are really successful with networking are, again, being very intentional about creating these weak connections and cultivating them over time.
Yeah, and that's interesting because I think that when people get hung up with networking, we feel a lot of pressure that like to make a lot of friends, that
Right.
everybody has to know things, or we have to know a lot of things about everybody. And I know I get caught up in this sometimes, partly because I'm interested in people, but I only have so many hours in the day to know you beyond, kind of the initial way that I got to know you. Here's the things you share on LinkedIn, or you're a friend of somebody else that I know.
Right.
So how has some of that changed then? And not just through COVID and sort of our reliance on the screens, more screen time, but also just in the past few years, with job changes,
Right.
with the way that the world is changing. How has that been shifting, and how it's made you want to update the book?
Yeah, I think that COVID and the pandemic, social distancing, the upheaval of the normal employee-employer contract as far as where we're going to work, whether it's remote or in office, I actually think that this did not create the shifts that we're going through. I think it accelerated it quite a bit. I tell people I think we're seeing about 10 years of digital transformation in 10 months, right? In 2020, some people had to do it in 10 weeks or even 10 days. But what I think technology really did, and this was something that I first talked about networking in the 21st century, and then really leaned into networking in the 21st century on LinkedIn, is that the digital tools give us a way to outsource some of that relationship building in a light way. I think we had previously seen kind of the gold standard of networking, and whether this was realistic or not, be these people who, yeah, I know everybody in my Rolodex, I know who their spouse is, their kids' names and birthdays, and there is definitely some value to knowing those things about people, but it's exhausting. It's very hard. I still remember hearing a trainer in the real estate space who was trying to teach real estate agents how to like really be good networkers and build business. And the prescription was like, okay, you need to, stop by to see at least 3 people a day at their place of work. You have to send 5 handwritten notes every day. And it was just all of these things. And that's exhausting. Yeah. But what technology was doing, and I think, again, well before the pandemic, but it accelerated because of the pandemic, it's given us these ways of touching our relationships lightly. Like this Zoom call, and all Zoom calls we have, I mean, sometimes we get a little over fatigued by Zoom calls, but the ability to just say, hey, I want to have a 30-minute call with you. There's no investment in my time to travel somewhere, to whether that's to lunch or to grab a cup of coffee. It's just like, oh, I can go from one call to the next, build that relationship, and maybe we'll just talk again in 6 months. And it's easy, it's low investment. LinkedIn, the people that are really using it well right now are the ones that are like, hey, I can not only share some content about what I'm doing easily and in a couple of minutes, but I can spend 10 minutes there and see what's happening with Darcy, find out how the book's coming along, what she's doing. Those light touches really are a great way to keep relationships. I call it at a simmer, right? They're there in the background, a light touch here and there. Hey, how you doing? Again, when I need help with something, or if I go, hey, there's a connection I can make, it's not coming out of the blue. We're just kind of, turning up the heat a little bit on that relationship because we've invested social capital in a light way. We've made deposits over time. So I think that's the biggest way that technology has really made networking, again, if you're strategic, if you're intentional, a lot easier and a lot more impactful.
One of the things that I catch myself saying from time to time is visibility equals viability. And, there are people who will resist showing up on LinkedIn. Oh, I don't want to, I don't have anything to say. I don't want to be, seen as bragging. I don't want to be seen as full of myself. So what do you say to that? Like how, if someone
Sure.
wants to build their network, but there's kind of that internal resistance to, yeah, I don't like social media. Some people are, sharing stuff I don't agree with. And even on LinkedIn, which has been a professional platform,
Right.
that there's still some of that bleed over. But what's your advice for folks about specifically using a tool like LinkedIn to be able
Yeah.
to grow those weak ties and to, be able to keep that network on a simmer?
It's a great question, and actually incredibly resonant right now, because so I work with a lot of organizations on helping their teams, sales teams, their entire teams on LinkedIn messaging, and I talk to a lot of executives. And executives, more than almost anybody else, are the ones who say exactly what you just told me. I don't know what to say. I don't want to be bragging. I don't want to put myself out there in a negative way. And what's interesting is, if you don't, I like visibility is viability. I often say that personal brand is visibility plus reputation is our brand. What I tell these executives is, and I'll tell anybody else, is it's not about bragging. It's about actually letting people know what you're doing. Because until you tell them, and this is actually why I love something like LinkedIn, until you tell somebody, they can't know. They're not psychic, right? If I have and I'll put myself out there as an example. If I have a great client story, or if I've got a book coming out, I don't want to be an ultimate self-promoter. It's kind of, I'm the same way. I don't want to be seen as like bragging or self-promoting, but if I don't promote for myself, nobody else will. And if I don't say like, hey, I've got a book coming out, nobody can know. And what's funny is when you do that, people don't respond like, oh, he's being so self-promotional. They're like, oh, that's super exciting. Looking forward to it. How can I help? Yeah. So what I tell people is it's not about bragging. It's about allowing people to see your perspective. And especially if you're somebody who's been in your industry for any length of time, your perspective is valuable, right? It doesn't have to be unique. It doesn't have to be, I'm a thought leader that is, going to shake the foundations of our field. No, it's your personal perspective and your insights have value because they're yours. And that's what people do want to connect with.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I have a workshop that I teach called Mastering the Art of Bragging. And the subtitle on that is what today's humble leaders and other professionals need to know. And, part of that message is not around the humble brag of the, putting yourself one over somebody. It really is coming from that place of service, which is what I hear you saying. It's like, if I have something that I believe in, that I believe can help somebody else, I would be remiss if I didn't put it into the world. If I had the one chemical that mixed with some other chemical out there was going to wipe COVID off the map, and I wasn't telling anybody I have this one chemical, then like bad on me. And so I think sometimes that we don't realize that we might have something to share, a point of view or a story about what we're doing, or even a pat on the back for somebody else. That's one of the other things strategically that that I know you're doing with LinkedIn. So
yeah, you don't want to, if all you do is show up every day and say, I'm awesome, I'm awesome, I'm awesome. Yeah, of course that's going to get old really quick. Yeah. But almost anybody who has this concern, they're not going to do that anyways.
That's a great point.
It's something I actually first came up with this concept when I was teaching sales professionals. I was like, if you're worried about being pushy, you're not going to be pushy, right? You can't be if like that's something that's a concern, you're not going to be a jerk. Mm-hmm. If you don't want to be a braggadocious jerk, you're not going to be. Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean you can't say, hey, I just got this promotion, or hey, our company just hit this really big milestone, or this is a really cool career credential or certification I got. People, yeah, if you're worried about being braggadocious, but you still put that out there, you're going to put it out from a place of humility. You're going to put it out. And honestly, humility is not always what you want to go. There's nothing wrong with telling me what you're good at. I want to know, because again, you might be able to help me when I need it. If I know that you're the expert and I got a problem, I'm like, cool, I know I can call Darcy and she's going to be able to help me out.
Yeah. And I do think people like to cheer each other on. I mean, I think sometimes 100%. We get caught up in, everybody is, dragging people down. But, I think that as you're building your community, it's also, how can you lift other people up? How can you amplify what other people are saying, or, give them a comment that reinforces the thing that they just did. So for those of us who wanting to work on our networking game a little bit, who know that as we go into the end of this year, get ready for a new year, whatever that's going to bring, whether that's growing where we are or thinking about other things that are next, what are the one or two things that you would recommend that everybody do now to make sure that their networks don't suck?
Right. The one or two things, which is good because, there's only a couple hundred pages of stuff to do. Here, but it's such a valid question. And this is what I get asked a lot, because there is this idea like, okay, is there just one or two things that I got to do? And if I do those, everything else will be okay. I kind of think networking is a lifestyle choice, right? You kind of have to start embodying it. But there are a couple of very specific things I think that you can do right now, even if you're like, I don't know what I want to do with my career. I don't know what the future holds, because there's a lot of uncertainty in the world. And I think even when there is a lot of certainty, there's still a lot of uncertainty. We really don't know where our career journey is going to take us. One thought I have is that you need to start networking now, and put it, whatever that means to you now. One of the biggest mistakes I see people make is that they network when they need something. And that's a very hard place to network from, because you're coming from a place of desperation often, like, oh, I need to get a new job, I better start working my network. No, that never works. There's a great Irish saying, the best time to fix the roof is when the sun is shining, right? So, I have a friend who recently got a new job. I was like, great, start networking, right? Because you're going to need a new job. Might be in 2 years, might be in 20, you never know. But start to make those deposits, right? In whatever way that looks like. The second thing I would suggest to everybody, and this is actually really hard for people who are not in sales or not running a business, who don't talk about themselves commonly. Come up with your elevator pitch. Come up with, and not because you have to give it at an event, but how would you explain what you do and what you add to somebody else? Because that will come up. You can't expect, again, other people to talk about you any better than you can talk about yourself. So if you go, I'm going to invest in my network, I'm going to have a clear perspective and point of view that I'm coming from when I do that networking, that goes a long way. Because then those are the strategies. Then it's the tactics of whether it's LinkedIn, going to events, doing some Zoom calls, whatever it might be, that will naturally flow from those first two.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's great advice that, it is a long game, right? It is 100%. doing things over time. It's a lifestyle. But it's recognizing not just, oh, I need to do this because someday I might need a new job, but that, one of my mantras is somebody out there needs me. And it's the thought that, if we're not connecting and sharing and checking in with people and just, not to
100%.
micromanage them, but just to stay in that, that weak tie, like just, being visible enough, top of mind, right? That there's a difference that I might make for somebody that I have no idea what that's going to be, but it just, may hit at the right time in the right place to make a difference. And that's, part of why I do what I do. I know why you do what you do. So
exactly. I told a client once that good networking is solving a problem you're going to have in 2 years.
Oh, that's great. Good networking is solving a problem. You're going to have
in 2 years, you'll be like, I need a new employee. I need a new partner. I need a new supplier. I need a new vendor. I need a new job, whatever it is. You're going to have a problem in 2 years. Right now, the stuff you're doing now, it is a long game. And sometimes it's great. There's a much faster payoff, but sometimes it is. It's just that investment, or it's just not the right time, the right place, not the opportunity. It's kind of that story of a married couple that met 20 years ago, and they were not in the right, maybe one was married or the other was married, or just not they're just friends then, they came back together, and now they're like, oh, hey, there's something here. It's amazing how many times I've met people who are like, yeah, I met somebody at an event 5 years ago, and then 5 years later, their company had a position, I could call them up, they could help at that point, or vice versa. I was able to help somebody who I met years ago.
Right.
But you kind of have to have that long-term perspective for sure.
And I do think people want to help, and people want
100%.
to, network with you or connect with you or be part of your circle, and make sure that your network doesn't suck anymore. So
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
so great. So DFish, where can people find you?
Yeah, so davidjpfisher.com, probably the easiest place. That's our online home. I also am on LinkedIn, which we mentioned a bit today. LinkedIn.com
Go find him on LinkedIn.
/IMDfish. Feel just to even just search me on LinkedIn. Happy to connect. Just say you heard our conversation here. And then all of the books are on Amazon.
Great. And we'll have links. We'll have links to the books, and they're all freshly updated for the world that we're living in today, and probably will be updated, another few years for the way the world would change. But so much has stayed the same. People still the same. People still need to connect, and we need each other. So, but
exactly, we all need each other. The way we're going to get through any challenges we have today is with each other. So
absolutely. Yeah. Well, great. Well, terrific. Well, thank you so much for being here with me on Red Cape Revolution. I really appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
See ya.